5 o'clock. We'll get started here for the Board of Selectmen meeting today, April 9th. This Board of Selectmen meeting is called to order. Our agenda this evening will be a public comment section, approval of meeting minutes from 2 prior meetings, a discussion regarding the FY 2025 budget, annual report dedication, annual town meeting warrant discussion, a discussion regarding joint Grassbrook culvert, appointment of Kate McNutt and Bryn Durno and Bonnie Riccadelli to some various committees, IT contract amendment, and topics not reasonably anticipated. So with that being said, we'll go up to item number 2, public comment. It's a general discussion. For those who haven't been here before, it's a general discussion. It's kind of what do you want to talk about? Anybody? Yes.
Do I have to do anything formal?
No.
Okay, I just really want to advocate that we consider highly, that you all consider highly. I know every person that's going to be cut is an important person to our town, but I feel that we're in a place where we absolutely need town administrators. That as we move forward, it's so complex what's going on. Without a town administrator, we're just going to fall to pieces. And I'm putting my invaluable 2 cents in for keeping that position.
All right, anyone else?
Thank you.
And so just as a point of reference, before we take her question, this meeting is also a joint meeting with the Finance Committee, AKA Advisory Board. They do not yet have a quorum, so their meeting is not called to order.
Right.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I just want to put in my own 2 cents that I know cuts are going to have to be made, that we're in a really difficult position. But I just want to make an argument to limit the impact of schools as much as possible. I know there's not a whole lot of fat to be cut on the town side, but as much as possible, if we can please try to preserve some amount of money that's going to the schools. As I understand it from all the presentations they've given, one of the big areas that we're going to use is interventionists, which counts as an administrative role. And so I know people always argue that schools are top heavy, there's too much administration. Part of that is interventionists, which are people that deal with the general population before kids are required to get services. If we cut those interventionists, we are going to have more kids that slip behind and need services. And we may not be able to provide those services, and we're going to end up paying more out of district tuition for placements outside. It's going to be short-sighted because it's going to end up costing more in the long run.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Just call the advisory board to order.
Advisory Board is called to order and the joint meeting is in process. Anyone else with comments? All right. Approval of meeting minutes from 3/12/24 and the 3/26/24 meeting.
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from March 12th and March 26th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Next item is the FY 25 operating.
I just want to add to what she was saying. I just want to clarify that we have, as a board, and I believe as the selectmen, we have zero power into how the school spends their money, line by line. We're strictly looking at how much money we can afford to give them, and it's up to them how they're going to disperse it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Just, and yeah, I mean, that's, I think most people understand that, maybe not all, but the town provides a bucket of money. We end up going through some negotiations as to what that dollar amount would be and settle on a number. And to the extent that is the select board's involvement, we, as a rule, interventionists or paraprofessionals, we just don't. It's up to the school district to call that out. Yeah.
It's still one bucket of money. from
One
the
bucket
town.
of money.
So
That's it.
it's,
That's it.
yeah, it's hard to lose sight of that
Yeah.
sometimes. So-
I'm not sure it's a bucket anymore. I think it's maybe a pail.
For one budget item, we have no control over.
Okay, so the 2025 annual operating budget discussion, Mr. Jason. And are we gonna have,
Mark,
Haddad
he's
join us?
on, he's on.
And so we're gonna have with us the town manager from the town of Groton, Mark Haddad, and you see him over there in the corner. Mark, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Okay, Jason.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just gonna kind of run through some updated information based on the override collection outcome. So we can go to the next slide. So first, as you know, last Tuesday, the override request failed. We had great turnout, so congratulations to the town for coming out in strong numbers to vote. It makes our life, the result makes our life a little more difficult than I hoped, but it's great that so many people came out and voted. Just so you know, I believe it's still the case that the school committee is meeting, I know they're meeting tomorrow, but I believe that their goal tomorrow night is to approve their budget. So no pressure, but I think their vote is contingent on our vote, on the select boards and advisory boards vote on their assessment. Is that still the case? Okay. Next slide. So first, start with the only good news we have budgetarily. So as we all know, we started the budget process far earlier than we typically do. As that process moved along, we did get some news, and some numbers did change to the good, some very recently. So health insurance, we planned for a 5% increase. Our actual increase is a 2.2% increase. General liability insurance, we planned for a 10% increase. That actually, believe it or not, our general liability insurance assessment is being reduced year over year. And then the assessment we received from Greater Lowell Tech has reduced substantially. And we just level funded that from last year. So, so it's been reduced substantially based on enrollment. So altogether, where that equates to approximately $78,000 in savings, which is great news.
Yeah, better than nothing.
Better than nothing.
There's blood in this rock.
Yeah, we'll take what we can get. So that is
Somewhere in there.
that's helpful news. Yes, for sure. So both town manager Groton and myself have been giving presentations about this budget over the last several months. And both of us had presented on different scenarios if the override failed. My presentation is mostly going to be focused on the Dunstable scenarios that we presented. Based on conversations with the town of Groton and the school district, there was general consensus, I'd say, that those are the scenarios that we should focus on, frankly, because the town of Dunstable cannot afford the scenarios that the town of Groton was running. Because that it would put additional pressure on the town side budget when we're already feeling substantial pressure. So the scenarios that the town of Dunstable had presented was one, assign our new available revenue 65-35, 65 to the schools, 35% to the town. Proportionally assign the bottom line deficit, 65 to the schools, 35 to the town. And then the last and probably least desirable option for both sides is for one side or the other to cover the entire deficit. So the result of those scenarios, of course, if the school district took on the entire deficit, the town side would be balanced. Scenario two, which is proportionally assigning the new available revenue, 65 to the schools, 35 to the town. The town side deficit is just shy of $75,000. If we took the overall, the underlying deficit and assigned that 65, 35, the town side deficit would be $243,000.
Just for context, what's the typical municipal approach in Massachusetts? It's generally the 65, 35. If you were to ballpark,
Proportionate, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
more
this is-
often than
it's not, I don't know if the school, but my experience, based on my experience, this is about where it usually
okay,
lies. Maybe, Groton 60-40,
Yeah.
we're 65-35.
okay,
These are the Groton scenarios, so I did run these numbers just so you could see it. They reduced, the scenarios they ran was 160-40 assigning the underlying deficit. If they were to fund it at that level, the town of Dunstable would have a $432,000 deficit. The town of Groton also ran a scenario where they assigned 74% of the deficit to the schools. That's based on a level funded town side budget. In that scenario, we'd have a $370,000 deficit. So I put some math to each one of the scenarios. This first scenario is not easy to read, and I apologize for that. But this is essentially the town. We know what the impact of scenario one if the school absorbs the entire deficit. We're balanced. But if we were to absorb the entire $694,000, these are the type of cuts we'd be talking about. These are likely the recommendations that I would be forced to provide. It would be, obviously not restoring the police officer position, not having any per diem firefighter coverage. It would be reducing my position. It would be closing the library. It would be reducing the entire senior services budget. We would and also have to get rid of salary lines in Board of Health, Planning, Conservation Commission, and the custodian of Town Hall.
would essentially turn this building into a casket.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. And no one's recommending this.
Yeah,
I
that's
just make that clear. This is
Yeah.
the last thing I'd recommend. But just so everyone understands, if we were to absorb the entire deficit, these are the type of decisions we'd be forced to make. So scenario 2 is the new available revenue assignment. In that case, as I stated earlier, we have a $74,000 deficit. And frankly, that would be covered by the savings that we've experienced. So if we were to choose scenario 2, one option would be to account for those savings. Like I said, health insurance, general liability, assessment, gradable tech, that equates to $78,000. We would be balanced with a little to spare. And that budget includes the restoration of the police officer position and the per diem firefighter. Scenario 3, $243,000 deficit. To make this work, we would need to cut, we wouldn't be able to restore the police officer position or the per diem firefighter position. We'd have to cut about $8,000 from the library. The town administrative training line by $4,000, and then $20,000 out of paving and highway, and $5,000 out of brush signs and lines and highway. That would get you to $164,000 reduction. That, including the savings we're already experiencing, would get you to $243,000. So this slide just shows the increases that the Groton Regional School District assessment would see under each scenario, as well as the budget increases on the municipal operations. So scenario 1 on the town side would remain the same, would remain as we presented all throughout, because we wouldn't have to make any changes. Scenario 2 would reduce the increase to 2.42%, and scenario 3 would be to cut. It would, actually, our budget overall would go down by 1.18%. On the school side, scenario 1, their assessment goes up less than 2%. Now that's if they absorb all of the deficit. Scenario 2 is 2.8. Scenario 3 is 5% increase. So I also wanted to include forecast information for 26 and 27, because all throughout this process, we've been looking at this as we know this is not a one-year problem. This is a multi-year financial problem. It's a structural problem. And if we view it in terms of 1 year at a time, we are never going to fix the problem. It's just the truth. So when considering these scenarios, I also ran numbers for 26 and 27. The Groton-Dunstable Regional School District assessment increases are based on numbers that were provided to me by the business office in the school district. And the budget increases are based on what we've been using as baseline projections throughout. We presented 2 months ago. It's the same thing as we're presenting now. So scenarios don't impact really the municipal projected increases, but they do impact the Dunstable School District. So scenario 2 for 26, the percent increase is 7.5. Scenario 3 is 6.5. On the town side, it's 2.6. And then in FY27, scenario 2 is 8.8. Scenario 3 is 8.8 as well for the regional school district, and for the town, it's 2.6.
Though it is important to recognize, Dr. Cheston's finishing up and there'll be a new superintendent. So, she's finished up her time there and done a lot of work. So a new superintendent could bring other ideas. So it's worth at least acknowledging that.
So based on those projections, the scenario 2 and 3, and I have focused on those because scenario 1 is just, I don't want to me,
get too far into the
it
weeds.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I didn't even go for any of those. So these are the deficits we're running in 26 and 27. It's basically no different than this year, than 25. It's the same, almost identical situation, slightly less. So when we're making a decision on how we're going to fund FY25, if we're not considering these out years, then I don't think we're doing our job properly. So that's why I went through the process of kind of trying to forecast these the best I could. So other considerations, I just wanted to point out some of these. FY25 relies on $100,000 of free cash, less than the current FY24 fiscal year. It also includes $120,000 of capital expenses that we've included under the tax levy, in the tax levy. And also, I just want, and Mark may be able to add some color to this if I get anything, if I mess anything up. But obviously, just like we always say, the town of Groton's assessment impacts the town of Dunstable, the reverse is true as well. And so, based on kind of our initial discussions and the fact that they've asked the town of Dunstable, and I actually appreciate, I should note that they've really been working with us and want to make sure that whatever we do, we can afford to the best of our ability. So I thank both the town of Groton and the school district for that. Having said that, the scenarios we have are much less than what Groton can actually afford, more than what we can afford. So what that does is actually provides some excess capacity. on
Flips
the
it.
town. It flips it. So Town of Groton actually has some capacity within their tax levy to fund more based on our scenarios. So because of that, the amount is approximately $620,000 that they have under their tax levy. So because of that, Mark is working now on options, I guess, kind of investigating options on whether or not he can either, or the town of Groton can either make a one-time donation, a grant, or gift of some kind in that amount or somewhere near that amount to help, at least in FY25, relieve some of the pressure on the overall reduction of the assessment for the school district. Mark, if you're there, Mark, if I got anything wrong or you have any more that you want to add.
You got it 100% right. You got it 100% right, Jason. And I will let you know the town council has told me that if we're into a grant agreement with the district, we can provide a one-time gift of funds to the district. So that is absolutely something that can happen.
But that's only a 1 year excess capacity for Groton, if I recollect, if I'm remembering correctly, right? Yeah.
You're right, Karen.
Yeah, it's 1 year.
You're 100% correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the discussion with Mark, with Sherry and Laura and the school committee. So my concern with that is obvious. So if Groton is able to give and is approved to provide that payment as a one-time payment, if that in FY26 just kind of moves into the assessment.
Yeah.
And then, the percent increases on the larger assessment.
Yeah.
That creates on day one about $140,000 hole for us because we wouldn't be matching it for FY25. So we've had conversations back and forth about, okay, that's not super helpful to us either for FY26. So what we discussed is using the one time for one time. So sadly, what can I? Okay, I don't want to speak out of turn. Okay, so what we've talked about is using the one-time grant, sadly for unemployment costs, because hopefully we won't be absorbed. We have ongoing unemployment costs.
Right.
And then for the PFAS mitigation, the purchase of water that they're required to do until the project's up and running, using it for that one-time cost as well. So kind of aligning the one-time cost with the one-time revenue, so that it's not part of the annual assessment moving forward. So that's the plan as I understand it right now.
Yeah. Still the recognition that they could put that money into stabilization to reduce their deficit the following year, right? I mean, that would be the proper budget practice to save themselves from themselves down the road. I guess it's saving us.
Yeah. I mean, it's saving, if they weren't to use it for unemployment, say, then they'd have to dig deeper into operations, so about $500,000 to cut basically. So there would be, $2 million.
Moving it around, basically. Yeah.
So I put a recommendation together based on some conversations I've had with some of you. And I don't love it. It's definitely not my favorite thing I've done since I've been here. But I think looking at it in a 3-year window does require us to acknowledge that we don't have enough money to support our expenses right now, period, in the storage stuff. And we're not gonna have enough money to support our expenses in 26 either. And over the last 2 years, I've been here a year and a half, both budget cycles, we've gone and asked for overrides in both failed. We've tried different approaches to those overrides, and the community has clearly said that they don't want to pay more than 2.5 allows. And so I think from a planning perspective, we need to be prepared for that, and we need to plan for that, basically. So what my suggestion is, and if you don't agree, no, I'm 100% okay with that, but my suggestion is from a 3-year standpoint at least. We should fund the school district at scenario 2 levels, which is the revenue assignment creates a $74,000 deficit for the town. And I say that for two reasons. One, it is a lower assessment, but 2, because as long as that one-time gift is able to happen, or one-time grant is able to happen, the difference between scenario 2 and 3 is not huge. And so either scenario affects the school district in a similar manner. So because of that, I suggest funding the school district assessed at the scenario 2 levels. But I also suggest making the reductions necessary to balance on the scenario 3. And then based on those reductions, to reduce our reliance on free cash by the amount we cut, which is $164,696.
So a combination of 2 and 3.
So that would be not returning the police officer or the per diem firefighter, correct? Yep. And then like library energy, supplies, reduction in highway paving, town administrator training, sort of stuff throughout the municipal budget, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
But based on production, based on projections, that's not going to be enough.
Right.
So I think we need, understanding that we've been told, similarly to what you're saying, Jason, I agree with you. We've been voted down twice. I'm not interested in getting slapped in the face again. I'm not sure if anyone else is, but I kind of akin it to that based upon the time and energy we put forward to be able to develop the best possible budget for our town. We continue to get told no. So we need a long-term fix. I believe not reinstating the positions that we just discussed with the police and fire, which is horrible to say. I hate even bringing it up. It doesn't provide us with the long-term. We're already in 26 looking for deeper opportunities to be able to do that. I think through the budget cycle, we had just recently discussed that we went through that, the biggest thing was talking about reducing our expenditures while increasing our revenue, both short-term and long-term. And I know this is an extreme scenario, but obviously it's highlighted prevalently there in multiple scenarios, is that we do have a building that does cost quite a bit to our town and could provide some relief further down the road. Like short-term, obviously scenario 2 works, but I think in the long-term situation, I think we need to be looking at rezoning the library, closing it, selling the building, and finding a business that wants to move in. I think that provides us with a reduction in budget, cost. It also increases our short-term revenue and our long-term revenue by finding that right position. Or right opportunity. I think that there's an opportunity for us to make it through 26 and start to get ourselves in a position to potentially be able to get somewhere into 27. Because right now, as we sit, we just saw the numbers, 26 is we're back asking again. And my guess is we're going to be told no again. And we're going to be in that, so I think in this scenario, we plan accordingly. We don't restore the positions nobody wants them, that we want, but nobody seems to want to fund. And then, find a way to increase short-term and long-term revenue. I think that option provides both.
And just to add to that, is we're not talking FY25 at the library, we're saying FY26 would be a possibility, would be to do that, right?
So, yeah, I believe we have to rezone. I don't believe it's zoned as business right now, but rezone it as a business. It's an opportunity. It's a town-owned facility. And the dispatching of that facility provides one-time funding that probably gets us through FY26 and long-term funding with potential revenue growth from our increased taxes, whatever business may move in that.
Mrs. Simmons?
Scenario two, did I understand that correctly, that, scenario two would, even with the extra savings that we were experiencing, and, that would not allow us to hire back our missing police officer and firefighter and, the stuff that was cut last year?
If we're to look at FY '25 in a vacuum and block out any impacts to anything else at 26, 27 and beyond, if we're just looking at 25, if we go with scenario two, we have enough funding to restore the police officer and the per diem firefighter. And we'll get rid of them in 26 because we can't afford it. And people don't want to hear it, I get it. That's the reality. We will be laying off the police officer in 26.
And hopefully, going beyond that, just we'll then be paying more again, because now we have to pay for the unemployment.
Right.
It increases our budgetary cost in 26, because we will not be able to fund it. We already know, we've asked twice now, for us to be able to fund the police and the fire department, we've been told no. We were told slightly no the first time, and then we were told hell no.
Fundamentally,
I would just like to say, all of you, any of you folks that are here tonight who voted against this override, I'd like to hear your ideas on what you think, how you think this should play out. Are you just happy with the fact that we are now we're in the position here? Anybody have any comments?
Eric?
I think she was asking for some comments, I don't know if she.
Yes.
Still want me to ask her questions? Two questions. One, I know for my company, when we budget for 1 year old. We can forecast future years out, but they don't make decisions on anything further than a year out, because there's so much uncertainty. We're going into an election, presidential election, which could have huge impacts. So I get where yes, we want to look at future years, but I don't think we want to make decisions taking that into account, number one. Number two, is there a possibility to, based on your information, if I'm understanding this correctly, could we do, because there were some of us who wanted to be able to fund municipal. Is that still a possibility to do it override for a small amount for 1 year?
Just speaking for the advisory board, we have no interest in providing it.
I think the answer to the question, yes, there is a possibility to do that. But there's not a lot of energy or enthusiasm from the advisory board, and I don't know, I guess we're probably in the same position to try that again. And then just to kind of give you an overall comment, I agree, the years change from year to year. And forecasting of a budget is always done with historical data. And, we can't, corporate America, if I needed money, I go to my boss and say, I need $100,000, I need $1 million, and here's why. And we either get it or we won't get it, or we do something. We don't have that here. This is municipal accounting, and you get your tax levy, and that's it. There's no aspiration to go get money from something, to do something with it. But my point with that is that it does change from year to year, and the dynamics of the town changes a little bit here and there. But based on the historical data that he has, he's forecasted that position in 26. And, even the year after that, it continues to slide. And at some point, it's going to need correction. I just, I don't know, that's.
You have to remember too that, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm saying if we do bring back those positions, and then we get voted down again, because another override will be required if we want to continue to fund those positions, and we're not able to do that, we will then increase our cost
our unemployment
for
line goes up.
unemployment benefits to losing that position again. So it may be short term, everyone's happy that they got their way, right? The school budget got cut and you know, and police and fire are still here, but we'll be digging ourselves a deeper ditch, is what we're seeing for 26 by having unemployment benefits that we have to pay out to those people, because we won't be able to afford it. And we do have assessments that are still going to be in a situation that are going to be larger than what we're going to be able to afford in 26.
It also makes it very difficult for these departments to have a fluctuating workforce
Oh, yes.
below them. The pressure that is put on both the fire chief and the police chief to think that this year I have this many people, next year we're gonna lose them, that's gonna cost more. And for the fire chief, the same thing, you know, he came in with a level of staff and that's been reduced, and it's just exceptionally stressful. It's not particularly safe for the employees or the general public. It's a very frustrating situation to not be able to think this out a couple of years ahead. It's just not the appropriate way to go.
I believe it's our charge to be planning forward towards the future of the town, not just the next 6 months.
Well, I would also add that we, like, since I've been on the advisory board, we have been planning based on years out. It had, you know, it's not like we've just looked at this year and said.
Right, so you have,
You know, we hadn't asked for an override for several years until last year, and there was a lot of discussion around whether or not we should delay it another year. And the fact that we knew the school issue was coming was the reason why we did that.
right,
Because we wanted to make it clear that we needed some extra money to help fund municipal. It was voted down.
We also plan, I mean, like, the town administrator's office, the advisory board, the select board, other boards spent a lot of goodwill and time and energy. I think both sides really did. If you really step back, like, you know, the people in favor of it, there's a lot of passion in the town, and people against it showed a lot of passion as well. So we're truly taking what 47% of the town as registered voters is telling us to do. Like, that's not lost on me. It wasn't lost on me last year when the override lost by 6 votes. And I was really frustrated about that, but, you know, 120 vote difference is pretty clear that the town does not want their taxes to exceed a certain level. And they are okay with potentially the fundamental risks that opens us up to as a town for this year and for future planning. So we, as this board, sort of have to take those marching orders. Like, that's, you know, because we're beginning to, we have run out of ideas. I'll call them back. We have run out of ideas for, like, generating short-term revenue. Like, we have a couple new committees that are going to act on it, but that's not an overnight solution. And really, there aren't many municipal overnight solutions in general. Like, that's just not how, that's not the nature of how it works. Yeah.
Tiffany?
I have 2 questions. Does anybody know if when we, you know, basically lose our fire department and have a very small police department, if that affects our home insurance?
We're at the highest rate already, like, overall, broadly speaking, so you won't see much of a change.
And what is the cost annually to run the library? What's their budget?
It's about 180-ish K,
I thought it was like 200,000.
200-ish. Yeah, I was looking at a couple numbers.
Yeah, it's 200 plus the
Consortium.
the consortium to do was 13.
Yeah.
And just for the record, if my daughter hears about this idea, it's all Jake's idea.
One more, yeah.
So, just following up on that, we talk about closing the library. I just think it's important to, before you make a decision like that, look at how many people use that as a resource versus, and I'm on Parks and Recs, and I'm saying this, if you cut Parks and Recs budget to 0 and you lose the ability to care for large fields and, you know, mow the town center, you know, maybe it's something else that needs to be looked at. So there's a lot of people that enjoy the library, there's a lot of people that enjoy larger field and the ability to have summer concerts with porta potty and trash, but maybe that's something else that needs to get looked at, you know?
Yeah, I mean, as my own individual brain here, speaking for myself, like, I find it really hard to say we have a really functional library and we don't have 2 police officers on shift together, or like 2 firefighters on shift together to make sure we're safe. Like, having a library is this won't sound right, so forgive me, like, that's a privilege. Like, having public safety is a right that we all anticipate. If I snap my leg and I need help from the fire.
And I agree, and that's why I'm saying that maybe we just look in other areas that are resources, like Garter Field and the town common, et cetera, you know, and there's other places that can be cut too that would hurt, but I would rather have the, you know, fire department, police.
Yeah.
Gentleman in the back?
Yes, sir. Is it possible, running on the line that you're saying, is to just separate the line items so we can vote as a town? You know, maybe we just override just the police department, or maybe just the fire department, or maybe just the schools, and just have it line item broke down with the dollar amounts next to it, so that way you can really hear, because I think a lot of people from the town, they want the police department, they want the extra position. I think I was talking to Darryl the other night. You know, he's worried about being by himself out there, so he's got to be CPR, and I'm sympathetic to that. I was against it, I voted no, but that doesn't mean I voted no for everybody. I was just specifically the school system. I think the school needs to work within the budgets. That's my opinion. But is it possible to?
At the end of the day, there's still money that we will owe to the school. So if you a la carte the budget and only choose to pay certain line items, that doesn't mean we're not obligated to still pay for it. So by not voting for those things doesn't allow us any way to have the money to pay our obligations. So that doesn't improve our situation.
This brings me to point two, is we own a lot as a town, we own a lot of property, a lot of land. Is it possible, has anybody
And
talked
if you've
about
looked
maybe
into
getting
that-
rid of some, not the library, but I mean, getting rid of just vacant land?
There's a lot of land that is held, and it's held under Article 97, and is open space, held as open space on purpose, that was approved by town residents in town meetings over many, many years, and it's land that is not available to be used to sold for building purposes.
All of it?
Not every part of it, but there is a significant amount of land that is held either owned by the Conservation Commission, owned by the Rural Land Trust, that is in agricultural protection,
Right.
that is a town forest, or have conservation restrictions. There are many different instruments that are protecting this land.
Right.
And they have been specifically designated to be held as open space, not to be developed. So those properties are not on the table to be
But
used.
not all, is there a list that we can get together?
Absolutely, there's a list, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what the land use committee is supposed to be reviewing, and I'm sure they're gonna be coming to some of these same conclusions, that all of this land that you see that you're driving around is just not owned by the town, open game, so.
And so one last thing to note on that, it just pushes the problem. So if the average building lot's 200K in town and you get one-time funds, it doesn't generate a reoccurring revenue stream. It just gives us $200,000 more potentially this year, but then you're 200K short the following year.
Well, I think everything you're saying right now is a temporary fix. So even selling the library is a temporary fix.
But I believe
No, it's not.
Yeah, because the library is a reoccurring expense.
Reoccurring expense.
Yeah.
And,
$100,000.
Yeah.
and providing a revenue stream associated with that, with the sale of the building in the business district.
Alan Cheney?
Yeah, I'm on the land use committee. Eric is too, but I guess she's not here anymore. Okay. And we've gone through the town-owned parcels, just about all of them. And as Leah says, open space, protect open space, so Article 97 is simply off the table. Some people confuse the land trust properties, but I gather that you don't. But you'd be surprised the number of people who think the land trust is part of town or something. It is not private. It's Fish and Game, same deal, that's Article 97 land. So the number of parcels that the town owns, which are not protected in that manner, is about 20. Half of those are tiny or wet or both. It turns out that there were only, or are only 2 or 3 parcels that the town might look at as a granted one shot deal to raise a bit of money. in those cases, there is no strong feeling yet on the committee that they should be sold because of potential future uses for which they were bought and will be needed down the road. So the bottom line is, I think you're going to find the committee saying, no, town-owned property is not a way to either in the short or long term solve our financial problems. I will point out one thing, and that is that I mentioned this once before in a meeting. The town is selling water to Pepperell. Now, Pepperell is going to be doing about $10 million worth of improvement to our infrastructure to enable them to use our water. And down the road, of course, once that is used up in terms of their paying, they will simply pay for our water. That water is available because we have one of the best public water supplies in terms of quality and amount in the state. And it is protected by a little over 500 acres of open space. There's still some more parcels that need to be acquired to finish that protection. But that resource is tremendously valuable. And it's there. It's fairly well protected. Needs a little more, but that's a lot of open spaces too.
Wasn't that voted down, I believe, Pepperell? Didn't because we didn't answer in time and they went ahead with the project?
You would have to speak with the Water Commission to get the most recent update. My information
No,
as of,
no,
That's still a live deal?
Absolutely.
yeah, that's my information. That's going ahead. They're gonna need water. They need water.
Legally, they need water.
They need to clean water. They have water, but their water's not clean, so that's why they have to keep the water.
And what you need to do is to protect the island. The entire island. And that's what we've done a pretty good job at so far. And we're very lucky to have that unsullied aquifer as a resource.
Okay.
so we don't.
Jason? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nikki,
Nikki?
I just want to say that I keep hearing sort of this undercurrent of, can't we do line item, can't we separate out town? That's what happened last year and it didn't pass. Where people get this confidence, I think it's just a lot of chitter chatter that is confusing the issue and is really taking up our time. That's number one. And number two, I hate the thought of not having a public library. That is a place where kids who don't have the money to buy books and people who want to look at the jobs and a whole host of things happen in libraries. However, we are very fortunate to have just over the bridge the Jamesboro Library, which is extremely friendly to all of us from Dunstable, and always has been, and we also have access to the Groton Library. I don't like that as an alternative, but I think what you're saying, Jake, is appropriate. And, I hate it. These are the consequences of not passing the override, period. And none of us like it. None of us like it.
Believe me, I hate even recommending it just as much. If it's not something I want to do, I think it's part of the great fabric of our community here. But it's unfortunate when we're out of spot. We've run out of spots, like the blood to squeeze from the rock. Like we found a couple drops because we're fortunate that other people came back with reductions in cost. It wasn't, we've tried like hell. Obviously, Jason's done an amazing job with what he's done over the last couple of years here, a year and a half here. But it's unfortunate, but we have to find ways to reduce recurring costs. We have to find ways we need short-term money and we need long-term money. I think the tax revenue is long-term money, from a business. Short-term money is getting rid of property, understanding a lot of the property is protected, so we have to look for areas that are not And then, this is a spot that already has a building on site that I'm sure would be valuable to somebody with a working plumbing, septic, all the rest of the stuff, so it would be an opportunity for somebody to be able to move in and find an appropriate business there, which increases our revenue, which is, I believe, some of the things that were brought up when we've had multiple discussions with regard to our budget and finding other ways to do it. Obviously, we were told pretty loudly, I think that night, that we don't want to look at removing ourselves from the regional school district. I think there's a whole bunch of other hurdles that would even have to, before we even consider doing that. We saw the reaction there, and we heard what people said. I know we've heard, as Kieran stated, we've heard what people said twice now at the ballot. And as much as we want to look at the reasons why things are the way they are, we have done everything we can here in town to reduce our costs, to find ways to make it happen. And unfortunately, we're down to, I think I used the term, devastating to our town. If we didn't have the override, we don't have the override. It's going to hurt.
It's also going to hurt the school for like the changes in faculty, staff, and all those other departments. Like, this is across the board. Like, I think that's, just emphasizing that point. Like, it's going to be unfortunate for the municipal side, but equally so for our youngest residents. Like, and that's like the consequences for that. Like, I heard what Kelly said, they're huge, and they were during COVID. If you look at that in a vacuum, just that shift in public health policy was crazy, and it had consequences that we're dealing with now as a result. So we're just going to magnetize that now. Like, we're just going to, it's not really a plan. Like, it's an unfortunate way the community has let us know that they don't feel they can afford to pay the taxes. And I wish there was a better solution. I wish I won Powerball and I could just pay for it myself. Like, I would gladly do that. Buy a Powerball ticket. So,
but the other thing that too, just and you're kind of talking about all the different things that are being thrown about or bandied about online. There is that the state is not going to throw on their red cape and come save us. That is not going to happen. If they look at our average annual household income and they say, "You can afford it. Stop lying to yourselves. You can afford it."
Or it's developed. Like,
Right.
Senator Kennedy's like, start development.
Yeah.
He fundamentally told us that at a budget forum. He's like, get some development going. And I was like, well, sir, I wish that wasn't the way, but I mean,
they do not look at us as some.
That's literally what he said.
Every town around us has loads of development, and they're in the same
Same
position.
situation.
Right.
They don't have any money either. They all need to know about that. BS. The
I was
state.
standing with
I was-
all of you guys when he said it. He literally said, get some development. I'm like,
That was him when we went to Groton.
yes. I was like, all right. Like, but that's not a tomorrow solution. That's 4 years down the road.
Well, just
So
before we
back,
go-
hold on a second. Hold on a second. Point of order. Gentleman in the back, you've had your hand raised there for a bit.
Just a question, do you know how much revenue that's on the library? The building's $1 million, $2 million, whatever. How much that's gonna bring to the town? 200,000 tax revenue a year, 100,000?
Well, the net savings from not operating the library, which are
Right.
reoccurring savings.
Right.
And then the discussion point is that the library would get sold as, as a commercial space, which
Right.
would generate, the library isn't paying taxes right now, so they're gonna get a revenue stream on a reoccurring basis from those real estate taxes.
That's, what is it, $16 per thousand?
Yeah.
Something like that.
It's not 16.
It'd be tough to forecast that because you'd have to have, I think ZBA would have to change the zoning of the lot first and foremost.
Well, you can guess that house is worth $1.5 million, right? Let's just say.
Yeah. So what's that? $12,000 in real estate taxes? Like, we have only one tax rate in town. So
So exactly, so saving
it's not, it's half a child. Like, if you really want to fundamentally look at it, it's half a child at the school.
saving 100,000. and
200, 205.
I'm sorry, 200,000 and making about 16,000 off there.
Mhm.
So 260,000.
Plus the
Plus the
Plus the
sale,
one-
plus the sale price.
1.5 million or whatever it is.
Minus the 35K in unemployment.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you really want to play all the math out,
We
like,
get
And you're putting the seniors out in the street.
They would be, yeah, they would be.
None of us will ever, it's not even something I want, you know, like I said,
Senior
it's not
center
something I want to
meeting.
write out or even be a part of, it's just that
Or here.
we've got to find a way to reduce it, it does everything that we need something to do, and reduce
Hey,
it.
it's just, you know.
Hang on a minute, I gotta get to some questions. Miss Nikki, do you have a question?
Well, I was just gonna recommend that if you do close the library, the majority of the materials that are inside go to the schools in their needs.
Yeah, I mean, that's how the dissolution of that will occur, will be out in the future there a little bit.
Correct, but I just was helping that.
Plenty of room to put the boxes then that are over by the post office.
Yeah, that's a good place for it.
I want to clarify a lot of information that's out there about the line-by-line budget scenarios. And the fact that when you get to town meeting, it's not just a bunch of numbers that are thrown out there, it's a negotiation. It's a negotiation with the town's problem. It is a negotiation with the school committee to discuss what funding is needed and what we can agree on. By making changes to that at town meeting, you're creating a bigger problem later on, because we could then be forced to fund the school at a different rate based on what the school and the town of Groton have decided, not necessarily what we could afford, right? I mean, that's I hear a lot of people saying that we should just cut the school, but it's not that easy. It's a regional school system. You cut the school, then Groton has to agree to cut at the same rate, at the same amount. And they could then force us to do it with a super town meeting. We've never had to have a super town meeting, but it doesn't mean that it wouldn't happen further down the road.
At the same rate, but not the same amount.
Yeah, yes.
3 times the amount.
It makes me very worried by doing, the reason why we don't propose that is because we're kind of at the mercy of Groton in a way. And I don't want to see that happen.
Okay.
Yes.
Sue, could you go to the forecast slide for 26 or 27? So the cost that we're carrying for the police officer is $81,000. So if we went to town meeting and said, we want to fund the police officer position for $81,000. So let's go for an override for $81,000 and fund that position. And it passed. So we could raise the levy $81,000 more than we can on the 2.5. Those are the scenarios. Look at the increases in 27. So we have $87,000 more for 1 year. 81, thank you, $81,000 in 1 year. And then we're looking at $758,000, or even on our side, 124. It doesn't, the math doesn't work. It doesn't solve our problem by any stretch. So again, it's looking at 25 and saying, yeah, we fund the police officer. Are we going to ask for an override for a police officer position every fiscal year?
Why would you need to? An override is in addition to the.
Right, but it's only
1 year because it's the same bucket of money.
It's only giving us $81,000 additional. We need that number.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
But I mean, it pays for the police officer from then on.
But we still have a deficit going forward.
Right.
Right.
But the underlying issue is we still can't, even if we get that position for 25,
Right.
The following
problem
year.
is still massive. We still have a 500, I mean, that's not the deficit, those are just the increases, but the projected deficit is 500. So great, we can take off $81,000 of the 500. We still have a $400,000 deficit. Now what? Let's cut the other police position, but we'll fund the other one with the override. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You can play those games all day long. It doesn't work.
Alan Cheney?
Yeah, before you hang your hat on selling the library, I think the ZBA would have nothing to do with it. In terms of rezoning, to make it for business, that would be a town meeting decision, I would assume. ZBA would have to.
It would have to go.
And I believe a zoning change requires a two-thirds vote of the town meeting. And I can guarantee you that there will be some pretty passionate opposition to selling the library. So you want to take those things into account. I'm sure you already have. But again, it's town meeting decision, two-thirds vote.
Yeah, we had to do that with the highway garage
That's
property
right.
several years
Same
ago.
deal, highway garage.
Had to
Did
go
that sell or
to
no?
rezone it.
It did, because the idea there is that if the town gets a different highway garage, and the current highway garage functions, but it's not glamorous, then, and since the retail property next door is already its own business, it would make it we would be wanting to sell that property, and it would make it an attractive thing for the market. Okay? None of those things apply. If there's no library.
No, I agree. Did you look at Forest Street? The properties on Forest Street? Are those off the table too?
Forest Street. The three
I have to look at
building
that.
lots, probably simply because the money that was spent to buy them was CPC affordable housing money.
Mhm.
You'd have to, I believe, return the money to the account, which will be a sizable amount of money.
They're designated with a specific purpose, like the mud district is, yeah. So,
What's the designation for those
affordable housing.
affordable housing?
Oh, the triangle piece or something? Lowell.
Behind that right there, yeah.
Is there a time between now and the town meeting in May, to put the library up as
Would it happen this soon? No.
no?
No, there's no recommendation at all
This is just
for right
discussion.
now.
Yes, going on this,
We're talking ahead.
curious, like when that could be voted on.
It's looked at as a scenario, but it's looked at as a scenario that's got some reality to it. And however it works out, I don't know, but the library's been in the crosshairs before, a number of years back. And it was, it was trimmed back, our hours was trimmed back. What are you gonna do? You can advocate for, and I think the library, to me, anyway, is a sanctuary. People go there to read a book, a newspaper, sit there and meditate, and you see that all the time in there. The functionality of that building, other than just going there and borrowing a book. It's used for a lot of, the seniors meet there, they have their lunches and little presentations and stuff, and it's a very comfortable environment, there's parking there for everyone, and it works out sweet. The town votes there, the parking lot was big enough, voting used to be here. We've seen that parking lot full on voting day. So it's worked out well for us, and it's a painful option for us, but it's an option that's probably got some reality to it.
The town center district stops right at the library bounds, I believe, there.
Mhm.
So that could be extended and, I could get mine up.
Yeah, you've been working hard on that.
Drink our sorrows away.
We definitely need that.
I guess, I know we are just having discussions and everything said that, my portion of that, of response to, I don't want to see the library go away, but if we don't want to pay more, and we don't want to reduce costs, I'm kind of confused. That means we're not going to function. We get to a point where we have a budget that doesn't fit. So if we can't pay more, and we can't reduce costs, we can't afford anything that we're doing. So it's broken. It just, we have a broken budget.
We would need to pass another override
Either pass an
and get
override
us to
to
where we
fund
can
us,
collect enough
or,
revenue to support all of these things that everybody wants.
right, but if we were to, if it's not the library, say it's the water field, if it's not the water field, maybe it's something else, but we go towards all these different things, and, okay, we have an impassioned group that's gonna wanna save that, okay, well, we can't reduce costs there, we can't reduce, and you're left with the one people that literally can't do anything that are there, supposed to be there for us, to help us, and that's to cut police and fire. And that is, I can't even believe, you know, that we would look at that as, you know, options as to further decimate what is already an underfunded, two groups of people. So we've got to come to some reality that either we're going to vote for it and we're going to pass it, or we're not going to, and we have to reduce costs. It's a reality has to occur. Sad.
I agree with that. Gentleman in the back? I'm sorry.
Sarah Axon from Main Street. I did miss the first part, so I apologize if this is reading some information. So Karen, you did mention that the first override that we tried to pass only failed by 6 votes.
Correct.
And the second one failed by 120 votes-ish, well, overwhelmingly compared to almost passing. And I know you also said that you didn't want to go back to the community to see if you could go for a one-year override. So what do you think was the difference? What would make the 6 turn into 120? What do you think the driver was with that? Why would there be such a huge difference over such a short period?
The number, it was 300K ballpark compared to 2.1 over 3 years.
So does that not indicate or point to the fact that you could have more success with a one-year override?
But that's the point is, like, that's this year's bucket of money. And then next year, based on that projection that we're looking at for the school deficit, you're still short. You know, if we added 300K to this year, it would just turn the deficit into, you know, 300 less next year.
But we still need another override, because it's just not bringing in enough.
And I understand that, and I understand that of all of the options that we have, none of them are perfect. And I believe that's really not a non-perfect option. To have it reduced by half seems like that is something, you know, it would be the same as any of the other options we have thrown out that doesn't take care of the entire, you know, bucket of money that's needed.
The other, you know, sort of thought to that, and I agree, you know, if it were a short-term solution, sure, that'd be great. But for Chief Farrell and Chief Orr, like, trying to hire for 1 year, it's almost impossible.
It takes a year to hire somebody.
Yeah, because like, so like, you know, the morale in these departments is already low. It's low in this building. Like, we're trying here.
It's not perfect. It would be, even if there was like, I mean, you guys were communicating, through all the emails, and it would be nice to maybe hear from the people, about, you know, their feelings on the 1 year override. I still think that 1 year override is an option, not a perfect option, not that option, not an option that's gonna solve all the problems, but make solve some of the problems.
All it's gonna do is delay 1 more year, the ultimate
Right.
point, which is that we need more money. And I personally don't want to have, I mean, I got on the advisory board to stop the every year override. I wanted to be able to plan my family finances, and I wanted to say, okay, the town probably needs an override once every 5 years. That was my goal. And we're there, and it failed, and now I mean, I have zero interest in even entertaining the idea of another override this year or even next year. I think we're past that at this point. And the impression I get is that Rob gets it, and that even the school is getting it, which is why they're here, which is why Ron's listening, and they're asking us, what can we afford as a town? As opposed to them telling us that they can afford this much money and we need to figure it out. They're telling us, how much money can we afford to give the schools right now? And because both towns overwhelmingly, especially Ron, rejected the idea of an override.
And that's realistically where we wouldn't be able to, I guess our municipal side would, the house would be covered, but the school is gonna be, still receive the same level of cuts, because we failed by 10%, whatever it was. The Groton fell by 60%, I believe the number was.
Yes, I think it's like.
Yeah, so I mean,
The message was
I
clear.
still understand everyone's
Message was
point of view,
clear.
I still think it's a viable option.
I hear you. I just, you know, we're kicking the can, which is,
Picking a letter.
It's, Tiffany.
I think something needs to be said though about, you know, I voted yes. I'm assuming the good proportion of the people who voted no did it in hopes of, well, we can try this again, and we can go for less, and maybe we'll make it 1 year. But I think what people are forgetting is that the 10 or 12 or however many volunteers in this town that committed countless hours of their personal time away from families, away from other commitments, they don't want to do it again. They've done it twice, it's failed twice. They don't want to do it again. So what you're asking is for people who have already committed countless hours to just do it again in this meeting. And if they're tired.
I mean, the point was given to us very clearly, that people don't want an override. That was the message that has been given to us, that was the message that was given in Groton, and that's something we have to consider. I mean, if we could guarantee that an override would pass, we would do it, but you can't build a whole budget again expecting, you know, a 2-point loss or a 200-point loss. It's just, there's a lot that goes into it, and it's not just simply picking one line on and saying, okay, well, let's fund this, as they've all
I
explained.
understand, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I completely agree, I understand. I'm just saying that to look at it as they're not maybe saying no to the override, we compare what they said last year to what they said this year. It sounds to me like they're saying no to 75. That's what it sounds like. There's a huge difference between the two.
But the 3, whatever we needed last year is 7 this year. So next year it's gonna be another increase. And the number's not gonna get smaller. It's unfortunate, I hate to say that, it's not. I mean, unless we cut people, unless we cut expenses, the number's not gonna get
It's
smaller.
just another form of revenue. Not saying it's gonna solve.
No, I understand, I'm just trying to further explain that unless we reduce our costs, or increase revenue, it's just gonna, it's a multiple, it's just gonna continue to multiply.
To me, it's another revenue.
But the thing too is that, you know, our municipal side, if you break it down, our municipal side growth stays pretty close to the 2.5% growth. Maybe what, 3. It's not huge, it's sustainable. I'm not trashing the schools, but we all know that that assessment was exceedingly beyond our. So when you look at it, and personal opinion, not opinion of anybody else here, I think part of the no vote initiative was in a way to tell the schools, reduce your number. And they've given us countless presentations explaining as to why they can't. And I get it, they have a significant number of fixed costs that they have no control over. 67% of your budget is, you know, employees and benefits and whatnot, which is controlled by union negotiations. So, you know, unless the school budget can stay within the realms of the 3% growth, we are gonna be in this position forever. We are chasing the dragon. It's just not gonna happen. And if, you know, so the only way to fix the budget is to tell the schools, you can't raise your assessment more than 3%. Is that possible? I highly doubt it.
And I agree, they're working on negotiations right now, they're gonna help them with the union and the industry like that, but it's hard to tell exactly what will be different and what will be staying different.
Right, so, you know, and that's the really frustrating part about it is we have no control over the largest line item in our budget. And the only way that we can even consider trying to pay for that is by cutting the municipal side, which is as thin as it can possibly be right now. So the override is the only option.
Hang on, gentleman in the back.
People don't want to do it, so.
So it's clear there is no money, right? That's across the board. I think that message is really clear. There is no money. So we can talk about raising money by selling the library. Are there any other properties aside from town hall that the town owns that can sell aside from open land? Like any other buildings, any other structures, anything that can be rezoned for? There's a million ideas, but you need business in town. You need some business in town. to try to-
The businesses aren't going to be bringing in more taxes.
There isn't a variable tax levy based on commercial versus residential. It's all the same rate.
Right.
So it would have to be like a Walmart with,
No.
Even
then it wouldn't be enough.
If we split the tax rate so that the business is paying,
Yeah.
you still can't levy more than 2.5%. All it would do is shift the burden from residents to,
Some
because
of the
it doesn't, right, we split it however we would
Right, I don't
split.
think
So
there's
that's
any
not
business.
bringing more revenue into the town.
I'm saying for town-owned buildings, if there's any other town-owned buildings aside from this in the library, is there any other structures? Any other properties? Well, the school you can't do anything with, right? So.
Well, there is, we do have a couple of committees that are in place, and their charge is to look at that and come forward with recommendations that are realistic and attainable. And so that group is in process of working through this, and, you know, they've got all of the data that they need, and they've got significant resources in that group. So to answer your question more specifically, is we're gonna, you know, in the next couple of 3 months, that group will come forward with some sort of recommendation. As far as buildings, you know, the town's not in the real estate business.
Right.
We've got the library, the fire station, police station, highway garage, there isn't a lot of real estate in town.
The fire station too, that's falling down.
The
So
fire station that's falling down, that needs $300,000 in emergency repairs.
The union building, I mean, they're all falling apart, everything's falling apart.
Because we don't have the funding to fix it.
Maintain.
Mr. Jazinski?
Yeah, I'm sorry. You raised an interesting point because you pointed out that the problem is that the curve of the rising school costs, right, outpaces the curve that the town can raise. So even if we passed the override in 6 years, we would have exactly the same problem.
Exactly, yes,
So
that is correct.
Now, there is this concept of bending the curve, right? Long-term planning requires, if the curve is like this, and you don't have a plan to bend it down, we'll never come out of this.
Oh, no,
This
it's
is a
not.
perpetual.
It's not. It's just gonna be you're gonna keep dealing with it on a regular
Yeah.
basis.
So I think you raised a fundamental point that the curve of the school has to be met. If it doesn't, then.
but the flaw in education costs is they get more expensive
No, I
over
understand
time.
all
Yeah, I know, but like
that.
so then it's just you're
I'm just
delaying
very
the first
aware of
grader in 11th grade is gonna need potentially more expensive care than they would in first and second grade.
Yeah, so, either
Right,
get rid of.
what's the point?
2.5% and always, raise the taxes or bend the curve. And how we bend the curve, that's an interesting discussion.
Yeah. Well, and I know we've been talking about this for a while, but for 2 years in a row, we've been told what the public wants and what they want their community to be. Like, that's really what this vote was a line of. Like, people want the community to have modest first responder care and police and fire and a school system to bring its costs down. Like, that's what it was a vote on. And it's what people spoke up and want their community to be. And now we're going to deal with the consequences of it.
Well, I think it's not they wanted reduced emergency response. They wanted the emergency response, but not paid.
But like, that's a reduction. But that's reduction. Like, I mean, but inherently
I think
that's
everybody wants when you dial 911.
Yeah, still a reduction.
$22,000 education, and they don't want to pay.
I think that it's not proper to characterize it that way. To paint with a single brush in our community. That's not a good way of doing it. This vote was against 3 years of tax raises. Plain and simple, to me. No, that's how I interpret it. This was not for community this, community that.
But that's what a vote is. It's your right to decide what you want. Yeah, it's your decision.
Yeah.
I mean, how else can you define it? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. That's a problem. The systemic problem is the curve.
Yes.
That we don't have a plan to outpace it. Even with these, even if the vote passed, we'll be in the same boat in 6 years.
Well, one thing that would reduce our assessment a little bit is to have fewer children in the school, right? So that would drop.
So are you?
Going out to baby
God, I was painting with a weird brush.
So you're encouraging birth control for the town?
I mean, so
Yeah.
we have to make a vote on something here though
Let's
tonight.
just give us one, I think, Tiffany, did you have a question? I want to make sure everybody gets their question. Tiffany, did you have another question or comment? Okay. Nikki?
I just want to put a plug in here for, there are a large number of teachers that work for this district who are on pins and needles and on a razor blade every day that they're walking in, not knowing what the decisions are going to be, and who's going to be going, and who's going to get bumped. And because that position got lost as a young teacher, and now we're going to have to move over to this school, and it's really agonizing right now. And I think to just sort of keep pushing this, the schools, 70% is, the teachers, and those teachers went through hell during COVID, and they had to relearn how to teach a whole new way on computers, and they did it, and they did it successfully under the leadership of Dr. Chesson, who does things I don't always like, but in that case, she did a great job, and I think that we really need to not keep knocking this. Those teachers are not making a lot of money. They are not making a lot of money, and they are doing what the state requires. So whether we like it or not, it's not the schools that we went to 20 years ago. It's not 50 years ago. We don't light classrooms with candles. We don't write on slate anymore. We don't do it on paper. We have to have kids who are capable to function in the 21st. What century are we in? I know where I am, but I don't know. And that demand is something we need to acknowledge and to stop pussyfooting on people's needs. We are going to suffer, as we did in 2008, when a whole chunk of people had to be, on programs, had to be removed, and they've never come back, ever. What we're doing now, we don't know if this will ever come back. So, let's take this seriously. Let's not point to this one and to that one and to that. We're all doing the best we can, but it's not the school's fault. It's not the teacher's fault. And let's just stop that kind of thing.
I don't think anybody blames the teachers. I think it's the administration. No one
Okay,
blames
I'm just saying, don't even blame them. They have jobs that you don't know. You don't know everything. You do not, neither do I. That's the truth.
Okay, do we have, point of order here. Jason, do you have a question?
It's Jeff.
Jeff, I'm sorry.
It's all right. So I just want to point out, I'm the chair of the Economic Development Committee. I appreciate your ideas. If we need to do something, if you have ideas and passion about it, come to a meeting. I think we have an extra slot, but
Did you get my email?
I did not, maybe. I've had a couple of things, but, reason to be honest. But I just want to point out, I have a daughter who's 2.5. She goes to the library all the time. She loves it. My wife and I are studying one. Now, it's very simple. Now we're not, the public doesn't believe it. Sorry. But my wife said to me today, I texted her a while ago, I'm close to the library. She's like, are we going to have to move? I volunteer on like 3 or 4 committees now. I don't have time to go volunteer on committees. I do it anyway because I want the place I live to have the services that everybody enjoys. And I reached out to dozens of at least a dozen young parents and be like, listen, we pay for kindergarten. Every student goes to the library. There's problems with the school. Please get out and vote. I tried to do my part, and it's disheartening because the reality of the situation is My wife, she's like, let's move. Like, if we're not gonna have a good school, we're here. We're just have to love the nature. I have this massive garden in my backyard. I like the people here. I disagree with certain political things, but that's just the nature of the world we live in. And it's so frustrating to me that we're in this situation. So for those who wouldn't know, that's how I feel. I don't really have comments. The one thing I'll say is, to the advisory board, I send emails to Jason all the time. I'm like, hey, maybe we can do this small thing. I think in the government budget, they're allowing like a little increase to excise tax. I know that's not a long-term solution, but maybe that'll help us a little bit in leveling the budget. I don't know if it passes state house yet, but I keep coming up with small ideas, and I welcome anyone else who's not volunteering at committees to do that. So that's my piece.
All right, no other questions, comments? I'm going to ask for a motion.
So I'll move to recommend the fiscal year 2025 Groton Dunstable Regional School District assessment at an amount of $7,962,156 to be presented to the residents of the town of Dunstable at the annual town meeting on Tuesday, May 13th, 2024.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Okay.
I must be saying the number, so.
Yes, 7962156.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're gonna move along here.
We don't need a
So are we,
No, if you want to adjourn advisory board and just hang on. Just a minute. There's gonna be some further discussion here on the $13 million number, just so that you have, we will leave it right, but go ahead.
so just so I'm clear, the scenario 2 that he proposed
Yes.
is what, and either way, that was the scenario that we were gonna fund the school with.
Right.
The recommendations that he made regarding cuts, is that a further discussion or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep,
So are we
that's why
staying
we're
for that?
gonna hold this, that $13 million number is gonna be held until we can socialize more better where these cuts are gonna be coming from, and get buy-in from everybody before we just go off and say, here it is, good luck. There's gonna be some more work that we're gonna, legwork we gotta do to bring this thing and make some sense out of it and try to give it some sanity as best as we can.
Okay.
That's, so. Mr. Raff,
Are you discussing that tonight?
pardon me, we are not doing that tonight. Dr. Laura?
Yeah, so if I could just say one thing, so tomorrow night, the school committee will be discussing the overall bottom line number, but it will not be until April 24th that we will be presenting again, but what the reductions will be. However, if anybody wants to preview upcoming attractions, they can go to the February 14th meeting that we had with the school committee. It's gonna look pretty similar. There will be some savings and reductions, but those reductions will not be discussed at the school committee meeting tomorrow. We'll talk
Absolutely.
about that.
I understand. Okay. All right, so you guys gonna adjourn? You're welcome to stay. We love the company. We don't get this many people at a meeting. So we're thrilled.
A moment of exodus.
All right, so I'm gonna just,
Are you serving alcohol or?
Down at the library.
non-alcoholic beer only.
At Jones Pub.
That's right.
Check Jones' water bottle.
We're gonna take a 2-minute recess here.
Recess approved.
Yeah, let me please stop.